I'd like us to speak to Carol Karuga, who's the CEO of the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. She joins us now on phone for that. Carol, good afternoon and thanks for speaking with us. What is KEPSA's overview of where we go in 2021? The President in his address last year called on everyone to play a role. What do you think KEPSA's role will be in helping the rebound of the economy?
But I don't know if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Carol. Carry on.
Yeah, somehow you're breaking, so I don't know if I heard your question right, but I hope you're asking what the outlook is of the private sector for 2021.
That's right.
Okay. So the private sector, there are several things that private sector is looking at in 2021. One being, of course, a better year for business after a very gruesome 2020 with COVID. So we are hoping to see some recovery of business as business starts to pick up, as people start trading, as people start investing. So that's one of the things that private sector is looking forward to. And so some form of recovery, of course, cautiously, because then we're still dealing with a pandemic. And until the vaccination has been here and more people get vaccinated, and then I guess it's a cautious outlook that I hope better than 2021. Secondly, I think we are looking forward to seeing some of the businesses that, despite COVID, and especially in the IT area, that the innovations that came up during 2020, to see that develop into mature businesses, that is start to develop into some mature businesses. Thirdly, hopefully government can still continue to push on private sector, because it's better to lose some money now, than to lose the investors and the investment for future. So we are still hoping, even with the reversal of the tax benefits that were there, that there will still be a form of cushioning the private sector, so that the private sector can remain for the long term, and government can be able to get revenue later in life. Later in the year.
Yeah, Carol, speaking of taxes, there's been one that has caused quite a bit of debate, and that is the 1% minimum tax. And PricewaterhouseCoopers, in its giving their view on this, said that it may represent an additional cost to the business rather than a tax on actual income, and would be a little tough on new businesses which are typically unprofitable in their first years of business, and that this tax may actually have what they called unintended economic effects. What is your view and KEPSA's view on this minimum tax?
I'm really struggling to hear. I don't know if you have a better line. I can hardly hear you. I can hear you saying my name, but I can't hear anything else.
Okay. How about your thoughts on the minimum tax?
What's the view on the minimum tax?
Yes.
Would wish that the government could delay it, just to allow for recovery. I think it's not, the timing is not right. We understand why it needs to be done, but not now. Give business another 6 months to be able to just get footing back in business. And yes, some businesses have continued to do well, but majority of the businesses have really struggled. So instead of continuing to see mass layoffs, because for any business to survive, the last resort is to lay off people. So if the little profit or the little or just the survival that business has made, if that is taken away by that, then we'll start seeing more layoffs, which is not right. So I'd hoped that the government would have delayed that just for another 6 months until business starts recovering.
Okay, thank you. Just stay with me for just a moment, Carol, and we can try and perhaps call you on another line. I have about 2 more questions to get through with you. But let's try speaking to Victor Otieno again, who's from Vifa Consult. Victor, I don't know if you've been able to catch a little bit of what Carol Karuga from KEPSA has talked about with respect to the minimum tax, and she says hoping that the government can delay this as it will hamper recovery efforts for businesses, maybe by about 6 months. What's your view on minimum tax for the small businesses? Just when they're about to recover, then you've got the digital tax, then you've got the minimum tax as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the introduction of the minimum tax as well as additional tax is ill-timed. In the sense that SMEs, 3 out of 5 normally die within the first 3 years. So, of course, you need to give them more time. Given that we are still in a pandemic, we still might need to give them more time. We might need to give them more time to recover. I think assume that you're making a profit. So basically, you might end up tax any sense.
Okay, thanks for that, Victor. I think we caught a bit of that. We seem to be having another issue with connection. But you did raise an important point about SMEs typically not surviving past their 3-year period, and this was even before COVID. And obviously now, coming with this minimum tax, this would be a bit of a pain point for them. So that I just wanted to reiterate that point from you in case our viewers didn't get that due to the poor connection. John Lathan, let me finish with you here as we talk about, what happens. I know you're talking about increased demand for some of the lower cost housing units, but all of this is pretty dependent on, the economy fully recovering, revenues that were lost in 2020, hopefully coming back. Do you foresee or have you catered for any sort of default in this sector? John, could you unmute your mic?
Yes, hello, yes.
There we go.
Thanks for the question. I think the default should be limited because when you actually look at the lending against residential housing in Kenya, it's actually very small. I think we have about 30,000 mortgages, of which the vast majority are subsidized mortgages through institutions or the government, often borrowing at 6 or 7%. And I don't think those mortgages are likely to default. So the few thousand mortgages which are commercial, I see there is a risk, but there aren't very many of them. So my view would be, the people who've bought cash in the last few years, especially at the higher end of the market, some of them might be a bit underwater for the next few years. But I think generally, we'll see a strong recovery in 2021.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. And